For thousands of years, dead warriors were thrown in a pit or left to rot on the surface for animals and birds. Not until the 1700s had technology, warfare and society advanced enough to see the burial and memorialisation of soldiers, mainly for the officers whose families could afford it. In 1805, Lord Nelson's body was returned to England, preserved in a barrel of brandy aboard HMS Victory, and in 1840 France would bring Napoleon's heart back to France. But for most men, all fate held was an unmarked corner of a foreign field. In 1813, the Duke of Wellington, fed up with the amount of looting taking place, called his soldiers the scum of the earth, and in his army as well as others, the best that could be hoped for was an announcement on the parish notice board. As early as the Sikh Wars of 1845, regimental monuments such as this in the cathedral at Canterbury began to list in stone the names of all the dead, but the South African War of 1899 to 1902 was the first to see any systematic care for the British Army dead. Each casualty was given a metal grave marker, and the authorities tended the graves. Things were changing slowly due to a change in society. Greater literacy, the right to vote, and a growing middle class meant that the individual had greater power and recognition than ever before. The South African campaign saw the recruitment of a largely civilian army for the first time since the English Civil War. By 1914, social, religious and educational improvements had changed people's expectations. It became expected that relatives would be informed of a soldier's death and the circumstances. The British Army, though, hadn't expected a war on this scale and couldn't cope with the administration of all these deaths, so much of this work was done by the Red Cross Mobile Unit under a chap called Fabian Ware. Although the primary aim was the treatment and evacuation of the wounded, the unit also logged graves and kept records. In 1917 this became the Imperial War Graves Commission, and they oversaw the concentration, marking and care of the graves of the fallen. Mainly due to practicality and cost, it was decided that fallen servicemen would be buried in the country where they fell. For the most part, the host countries donated the land for the cemeteries. In Britain, the scale of the loss was massive. Everyone knew someone who had been killed, and virtually every family had lost someone. In the UK, only about 40 towns had not lost a single resident, and these became known as the thankful villages. With so much death and loss, a culture of mass mourning and symbolism grew. Symbols such as the cenotaph, the unknown warrior, and local war memorials became the focus of mourning around the country. Ironically, the Imperial War Graves Commission declared their initial tasks of replacing temporary crosses with headstones, compiling lists and landscaping cemeteries finished in 1939. The Second World War brought another round of killed and missing servicemen around the world. The Americans also adopted the approach of the Imperial War Graves Commission, but they also allowed the families to choose whether they wished their relatives to choose to lie in the country where they had fallen or to be brought home for burial. In Britain, the Air Ministry was coming under public pressure to do more about the hundreds, perhaps thousands, of aircrew who were officially listed as missing. Something needed to be done, and the Missing Research Section was set up to investigate these cases. Despite their incredible work, by the end of the war, nearly 42,000 aircrew were still missing without a trace. By December 1950, the Air Ministry was reporting that of the 41,881 personnel listed as missing in 1945, 23,880 had been known to have had burials. Another 9,000 had been recorded as lost at sea, leaving about 8,000 unaccounted for. With advancing technology came the advent of combat search and rescue. During the First and Second World Wars, It had been known for pilots to land and pick up downed comrades, but this needed a large space to land and take off, something a lot of crash sites didn't have. But the development of helicopters gave air forces the capacity to get into previously inaccessible sites. The Americans had trialled combat search and rescue during the 1940s, and by the 1960s helicopters had come on in reliability, payload and performance to be a serious proposition. Helicopters became a strategic part of operations. During the Aden campaign of 1966, it became policy that RAF anti-guerrilla operations conducted by ground attack Hawker Hunters would only take place when a Westland Wessex combat search and rescue helicopter could go with them. Meanwhile, American forces in Vietnam were making combat search and rescue into an art form. It had now become an implicit part of a serviceman's unwritten contract that no man would be left behind, dead or alive. In 1982, for the first time, British service dead were brought home with the fleet returning from the Falklands campaign. The Argentinians declined offers to have their dead returned home, and they remain on the Falklands as a visible claim on the islands. Nowadays things have gone full circle. In 1993 things went wrong in Mogadishu when a Black Hawk helicopter was shot down. Although a combat search and rescue team landed within minutes and rescued the wounded, they couldn't get the dead crewmen who were trapped in the cockpit. The area was secured and another Black Hawk was shot down. The crew were killed along with 2 Special Forces members. The whole area became a firefight which lasted into the next day. A total of 19 Americans were killed. It had become politically and socially unacceptable to leave your service personnel behind. We owe it to them. My name's Frank. I'm a private pilot in the UK with an interest in military history. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe and thanks for watching.